Listen carefully, not with the ears that hear traffic, arguments, and deadlines, but with that quieter, bruised space inside you where truth hides when the world gets too loud. The world sells noise. It glorifies chaos. It pushes you to run toward whatever shines brightest, even if the shine is fake. But the story you're about to hear, it isn't born from noise. It was shaped in shadows, written in hours the world never counted, built by hands that no journalist ever photographed. This is not a story of fame. This is the story of a man who learned to build greatness in absolute silence. His name was Jonah Hale. Not a celebrity, not an influencer, not a Silicon Valley prodigy with investors throwing money at him. He was simply a quiet engineer from Colorado who believed that one day the world would run on a power source no one had dared take seriously. People dismissed him not because his idea was weak, but because he was invisible. No spotlight, no network, no backing, just a stubborn vision carried on tired shoulders. Jonah didn't chase validation. He chased purpose. While the world was busy shouting opinions, Jonah learned to listen to patterns, to failures, to the small voice inside him that said, "Keep going, even if no one sees you." The truth is, some of the greatest revolutions in history begin in rooms so silent you can hear your own heartbeat, arguing with your doubts. For Jonah, that room was a tiny metal shed behind an abandoned textile factory. Cold in winter, suffocating in summer, leaking whenever it rained. A place rats lived more comfortably than humans. But that shed became the birthplace of one of the most disruptive renewable energy prototypes ever built. And like all breakthroughs, it demanded a price only a few dared to pay. He spent 12 years inside that shed. 12 years of skipped birthdays, postponed dreams, unanswered invitations, and the kind of loneliness that eats into a man's bones. Friends called him obsessed. Relatives called him unrealistic. Strangers didn't call him anything because no one knew he existed. Yet every night, while the city slept under its warm blankets of comfort, Jonah soldered wires with fingers stiff from cold. He tested circuits until dawn painted the sky. He failed more than most people try. But remember this: the world does not reward the early dreamer. It rewards the one who survives long enough to finish. Jonah wasn't chasing applause. He was chasing a clean energy core that could power entire towns using microthermal compression, an idea energy giants labeled impossible, theoretical, or ridiculous. But greatness is always ridiculous before it becomes inevitable. His prototype barely holding together, with steel brackets and hope, required one thing Jonah didn't have: endorsement. A scientist, a public figure, someone whose name could open doors Jonah couldn't even knock on. That's when he met Marcus Ellington. Jonah spent 3 weeks perfecting the prototype's presentation for him. 3 weeks cleaning the shed, polishing the metal, organizing data sheets, running test simulations. He believed, naively but beautifully, that when Ellington saw the truth, he would help the world see it too. A respected environmental scientist whose speeches were quoted in universities and think tanks across the country. Jonah had watched Ellington for years, admiring his passion for sustainability. To Jonah, he wasn't just a scientist, he was a beacon. The day he met him, Jonah's hands trembled. He wasn't afraid of rejection. He was afraid of wasting the 12 years he had sacrificed his life for. Ellington studied the device with a thoughtful silence that made Jonah hopeful. He asked questions, deep, technical, curious questions that proved he understood the breakthrough. Jonah felt seen. For the first time in 12 years, someone recognized the fire he had been keeping alive in a dark room. Ellington placed a hand on Jonah's shoulder and said softly, "This is brilliant, Jonah, but it's unstable. Too early, too risky. You should step back. I'll help you refine it. Trust me." Jonah believed every word. He left the prototype with Ellington, thinking he had finally found someone who would guide him, protect him, and amplify his work. Photographs flooded social media. Experts applauded. Politicians praised. Investors lined up. Universities invited him for lectures. And Jonah Hale, the man who had given life, health, and a decade of sacrifice to the invention was not mentioned. Not a line, not a whisper, not even an accidental credit. The world celebrated Ellington. The world didn't know Jonah existed. But what the world didn't know was that Jonah had built more than a prototype. He had built an understanding so deep, so intimate, that no one, not even Ellington, could replicate what he knew. And betrayal, for some man, doesn't break them. It awakens them. Jonah disappeared again into silence, into the shed that once broke him but now rebuilt him. Betrayal became fuel. Failure became direction. And the man the world ignored began constructing something so untouchable, so ahead of its time. It would expose Ellington and force the world to confront the truth. Jonah Hale didn't he speak to anyone for weeks after. Ellington's betrayal made headlines across the country. The world saw a polished stage, bright lights, expensive suits, and cameras capturing Ellington's smile. But no camera captured the moment Jonah sat alone on the cold floor of his shed, staring at the empty space where his prototype used to be. People think betrayal is loud. It isn't. It doesn't scream. It sinks into your bones quietly, like winter entering an empty house. Jonah didn't break that night. Something inside him simply shifted, like a lock turning for the first time in years. He realized that if silence was that place he built his dream, then silence would also be the place he rebuilt himself. Every morning after that, he woke before the sun. The shed felt different now, not like a workshop, not like a battlefield, but like the birthplace of a second chance. He didn't rebuild the old device. He didn't even look at the designs he once cherished. Betrayal has a strange way of sharpening vision. What Jonah built next came from a deeper place, a place Ellington had never touched. He created something far more advanced than a microthermal energy core. A system so efficient it could run on near zero waste. A system that did not just compete with Ellington's version but made it look like an unfinished sketch drawn by trembling hands. But Jonah didn't tell anyone. He worked in silence, breathing in metal, grit, and resolve. He stopped caring about recognition. He stopped caring about applause. The only thing he cared about was truth, and truth, no matter how deeply buried, eventually rises. Each night Jonah documented everything meticulously. Not just diagrams and calculations, but video logs, recordings, timestamps, digital footprints, evidence that traced his creation from its first spark to its final form. He wasn't preparing to expose Ellington out of anger. He was preparing to restore integrity to the world of science. He understood something now. Greatness doesn't need revenge. It needs proof. Jonah's routine became almost monastic. He slept on a folding cot beside his workbench. Ate whatever could be heated in a single pot. His clothes smelled of burnt copper and solder. The shed walls bore marks of frustration and brilliance alike. Scorched streaks, taped wires, scribbled formulas, discarded failures. But amidst all this chaos stood the new core, a sleek cylinder, sealed inside a transparent chamber, humming softly like a giant mechanical heartbeat. Jonah named it Radian 9, because it emitted 9 microbursts of thermal split energy per rotation, a phenomenon scientists believed impossible. One night, as snow piled outside and wind howled like a living creature, the Radian 9 reached its first full cycle. Jonah watched a data spike into ranges no system had ever touched before. For the first time in months, he smiled, not the smile of victory, but the quiet satisfaction of a man who knows he's back where he belongs. But just as he reached for the control panel, a faint knock echoed on the shed door. Jonah froze. No one ever came here. The shed wasn't on any map. The property had been abandoned years ago. He moved slowly toward the door, unsure if it was the wind, his mind, or something worse. When he opened it, a woman stood outside, wrapped in a long winter coat, snowflakes melting on her hair. She wasn't a neighbor. She wasn't a reporter. She was Leah Crown, one of the youngest investigative journalists from a rising independent news agency, known for exposing scientific fraud. Leah didn't wait to be welcomed in. She stepped past him with the certainty of someone who already knew she was in the right place. Jonah felt heat rise behind his eyes, anger, exhaustion, disbelief. "There's no story," he said flatly. "Just a mistake. I trusted the wrong person to see." Leah shook her head. "No, there is a story, and the world deserves to hear it. We received anonymous documents, designs, notes, early sketches. They match Ellington's breakthrough pitch almost perfectly, but they're not in his handwriting. They're in yours." Jonah stiffened. Someone from his past? someone he had trusted once. But it didn't matter. The truth had found a crack to slip through. Leah stepped closer to the Radiant 9. He stole your idea, but you're not here to steal anything back. You're building something new. Something bigger. She turned to him fully. Why haven't you told the world? Jonah didn't answer at first. He watched a faint blue glow inside the chamber. Because the world doesn't reward the truth, he finally said. It rewards whoever gets there first with the loudest microphone. And Ellington has all the microphones. Leah's expression softened. Not all of them. There are still people who care about real stories, real innovation, real sacrifice. He shook his head. This is bigger than exposing one man. This technology, it can't become a media spectacle. It needs protection. It needs time. Leah crossed her arms. Jonah, the longer the world believes Ellington created this, the harder it will be to undo the damage. You don't need fame. You need justice. But what she didn't realize was Jonah had already accepted something profound. Sometimes it's not about reclaiming stolen credit. Sometimes it's about building something so undeniable that the world has no choice but to recognize the truth without you even asking for it. 3 nights later, the shed door slammed open again, but this time, it wasn't Leah. It wasn't someone searching for truth. It was someone trying to bury it. 2 men in black industrial jackets stepped in, each carrying equipment cases marked with the logo of Ellington's Research Foundation. They had no expressions, no hesitation, no words wasted. They were not here to talk. They were here to retrieve what Ellington feared Jonah was building. Jonah felt his heartbeat hammering against his ribs. You have no right to be here, he managed to say. One of the men lifted a document, an official order, signed with Ellington's seal, claiming unauthorized duplication of proprietary material, a lie wrapped in legal language. Jonah didn't move. He stood between them and the Radiant 9 like a soldier guarding the last surviving piece of his soul. But before anyone could speak again, headlights flashed outside. Tires crunched through the snow, and Leah stormed into the shed with 2 cameramen and portable broadcast gear. Every microphone pointed directly at the truth. Step back, she said firmly to Ellington's men. You're on camera. Any forced entry or attempted removal of property is now documented. The men hesitated. Cameras are the one weapon silence cannot fight. But Jonah didn't speak to her. He walked slowly to the Radiant 9, resting one hand on the chamber. If I do this, he said quietly, I don't want an interview. I don't want a Helini, don't want a documentary. If I speak tonight, it is not for me. It is for every scientist who builds in silence, every creator who is ignored, every inventor whose work is buried because someone louder stood in front of them.